And we aim to capture those and do something about those, okay? So I think it'd be great to hear now, again, from our chair of the Programme Advisory Group, Colin Moffat, who's going to come up and he's going to share some highlights of yesterday, and he's going to move us on to today. So you can come up, Colin. Just next. Thank you.
Good morning again, everybody. Nice to see you. Hello to those of you who are online. I'll wave again, because they can see me, can't they? Oh, good. Right. So, what I'd like to do is just to give you a wee bit of a flavour of what I think came away yesterday and what some of you thought, because I've spoken to some of you. So this is not just my thoughts, but a key thing now is it's happening now. And I think that for me, one of the things that is quite clear is that back in 2010 or back in 2000, and I know that some of you probably aren't as old as me, so can't clearly remember 2000, but I was around in 2000. We were saying this is going to happen by 2100. And actually what we're finding is it's happening now. And so the science then, which was as good as it could be, has been refined, and conclusion number one is it's happening now. And that means we have to act now, that there's an urgency for us to take things forward, to move quickly. And I know yesterday the Chancellor did say he's going to do something about the grid. But no longer being part of government, I can say things that actually they're not really moving fast enough either. So we need to do something there. But anyway, it is happening now. And these are some of the key sort of points that I picked up that we need to be considering, we need to be including, we need to be thinking about in terms of what ECOWind OWEC is doing. And consenting, which was one of 6 key targets raised by our colleagues from the SSE, was highlighted as the big issue for them at the moment. So what can be done to do that? Managing uncertainty, that was another issue. And of course, one of the things we're asking you to do is to go forward with the advice from this program when there's still significant uncertainty, before you've actually completed your research, before you've published it and therefore had the peer review of the work, which is what normally has happened. But because of the urgency, because of the timescales, because of when people are wanting to consent, and obviously I'm more familiar with Scotland, and to help our colleagues in the Marine Directorate and the licensing operations team to get it right. And I'm not suggesting they haven't got it right so far, but to get it right, we need to help manage uncertainty. And also, it's really good to see everybody here, but it's been pointed out that there are still some people who should be in the room who are not in the room. Where are the consultants that we are actually going to be working on some of this and bringing them in? But ultimately, there has been good collaboration. There was lots of good discussions yesterday. And other things about precautionary principle, what is it? And I've sat in meetings years ago discussing the precautionary principle, and it does worry me a wee bit that in 2023, we still are actually in some ways asking the same questions, discussing the same points, and never actually coming to conclusions. So what do we need to do? What's the catalyst that is going to reduce it? And what can you do as the ECOWind OWEC programs to be that catalyst in this particular area? We need everything to be accessible and understandable. And yes, there is a science speak, there's an industry speak, there's a government speak. And we all need to understand each other. But that means we've got to facilitate from our our little silos that we're in to be across to everybody, so that we're, in effect, speaking a common language in terms of understanding what it's about. And to some extent, this comes down to how we present our work to people and the way that we actually communicate, the way we come across, the way we express things. And I love going out and speaking to young folk, because they pull you up very quickly when they don't understand something. And it's a great leveler. And I think we've got to always think about how we address. And this is not in any way about being condescending or anything like that. It's about making sure that the message we want to get across is the message we are actually getting across, making it understandable, accessible and understandable. Ecosystem approach, that also came up yesterday. And again, it's one of these things that, you know, ecosystem-based assessments that they've been speaking about in ICES, they've been speaking about in OSPAR since 1908. And again, it's something that keeps jumping up, and every now and again we try and do something about it. And I can recall back in 2010, when OSPAR was writing its Quality Status Report 2010, that we tried to do an ecosystem assessment. And we got so far down the road, and then the brakes were hit, because various contracting parties weren't sure if what we were doing was the best that it could be. So we ended up not doing it. So again, it was shelved. And then we get some other approach coming along. If we're going to do it, let's do it. Let's come up with a conclusion, or let's bin the phrase and stop using it and saying, actually, we're using an ecosystem approach. Either we do it or we don't, but we decide. And you know, I think that could be an outcome from this program. Together, of course, also with a collective understanding. What is it that we are doing? We cannot do everything. We will not do everything. So let's be clear about what ECOWind and what OWEC is going to do. So that's the first lot. The second lot of sort of conclusions from what you were saying yesterday was we need to think more a bit about the social sciences, socioeconomics. Where is that coming in? How is that coming in? And a strategic approach to how we gather data. And that data converted into information, that information being converted into advice. How can we do it? And again, you know, this is not a new thing. This is something, you know, there was for a period of time around 2005 to 2015 or whatever, they were speaking about, can we do ecosystem cruises? And there was all sorts of things set up. And again, at the end of the day, generally it hasn't progressed. So again, I think, you know, we've got to decide what is it we actually want here. And for this program, let's get on and do it. Let's decide what it is we want and do it, because that's come up repeatedly. Finding the balance. Where are we? And again, perhaps we all think it's a different place. So where is it? Where is that? You know, somebody used the phrase yesterday, where's that sweet spot that we need to be in terms of what we are producing? And then round the wheel again, going into my witch's cauldron there in the middle, sort of to mix it up. What else have we got? We've got, how are we going to store the data? What actually is going to happen with the data? And there's all sorts of things, you know, there's MEDN and there's ODIMS and there's the Crown Estate system that they're setting up. But what is this program going to do? Because that's what's important for this program, to make sure that the data is accessible, it's open, it's available for people to use, but also where necessary, it's interpreted appropriately and converted into information and then converted into advice. And of course, we're not just speaking about climate crisis, we're also speaking about the biodiversity crisis as well. And ultimately, we have a complex landscape, but again, coming back to how do we communicate this? How do we get that? Who are we speaking to? And yes, we know that some of this is for the people in the room. Some of this is to help with the consenting process. Some of this is to help at the end of the day with achieving our goal of net zero, but being aware of the consequences of what is actually going on around about. So actually part of this is about going out to society, because at the end of the day, the changes that are going to have to take place in society are significant. And so how we communicate the knowledge that's generated here, because there is a lot of good knowledge. And finally, I'm not going to go through every single post-it that went up, but the key point is that you identified the priorities. So we now have priorities in the areas of fish and fisheries, in the areas of ornithology, in the areas of benthic ecology. We've got priorities. But we've also identified that there is science being done, not only here in this program, but much, much wider. And we need to capture that. But we've also identified the gaps. And there's a job to be done there in terms of what do we now do, having identified the gaps. So there we go. That's what you did yesterday. So I think actually overall, it was a very constructive time. We would like ultimately to hear back from you, not on the post-its, you've already got that, but just send to colin.moffat@me.com your views on yesterday. Because actually what we do, we're serious about this. We want to be able to make it annual, and next year, we want you to, by the time you come to the end, to feel even more, yeah, this is worth my while coming to. And we want other people to know that this thing happened in November 2023, and when we advertise the next one, they say, that's got to go in my calendar. I've got to go to that. The people who aren't here have heard about it, and so they want to come next year. So that's also a task for you. When you're speaking to the consultants, when you're speaking to people who you think should be here who weren't, say, you need to have been here, and this is why. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you for a great, inspiring summary of yesterday. Shows you just how much we did cover yesterday across ornithology, across fish, and across the seabed as topics. As Colin pointed out, most of the work yesterday culminated in the production of some timelines. Today we'll be moving on to try and produce some more timelines. We'll be looking, as I said earlier, to focus our attentions on the complexities of cumulative effects assessments. And I think to begin to grapple with this new topic for us as a group, we start off equipping ourselves with a little bit of information regarding the challenges that are being faced across government and some of the working groups that have been looking at this over a long time. So I'll move us on into the next section of today, where we will be hearing about some of these challenges.